Hey everybody, this is Brian with Bear Cards 34, back with another show and tell video. This is the series where I take a deep dive into some of the sets from the past, and this is video number 3 from 1977 Topps. So this will be cards number 200 to 299, and I'm starting it off here with a handful of Hall of Famers that were in that 100 card portion of the set. That would include Mick Tingelhoff, who I believe passed away. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was inducted back in 2015, and he had 240 consecutive starts, so definitely an Iron Man in football. Fred Blintnikoff there, inducted in 1988. Super Bowl MVP, also Mr. Stickum. Always used to remember those images and videos of him with that stuff just covering his whole body. It was disgusting, but definitely stood out. And then Franco Harris, the late Franco Harris, who was inducted into the Hall of Fame back in 1990. Super Bowl MVP as well, and a 9-time Pro Bowler, one of the great running backs in the history of the game. Now, another thing I'll show here are the team checklists. So I've got, this one had there were quite a few of these in that 100 card portion of the set. That's the Chicago Bears right there. And then here is the Falcons, and it will show on the back who the leaders were in the different statistics, the different years. And there's the Falcons front. So one thing I noticed was, and so depending on which team you were a fan of, so for me as a Chicago Bear fan, if I had been around collecting back then, this was before my time, so to speak, but the Bears had a ton of players. And yet the Falcons only had a handful. So you could really see that in some of the sets. Some of the teams really they stacked up on. Nowadays, what's interesting is a lot of the sets, you'll just have the same 3 or 4 players in every set. And I know, I watched a video, it was, I think it was 2025 Score, the new product, and I think the base set was cut by quite a bit. And I was really disappointed by that because I actually enjoy getting cards of the players that I like. They don't have to be the big superstar names. And so I was disappointed to hear that that had been reduced. But in the comments to that video, everybody was so glad to see them shrink the set so that you're more likely to get the big names. And I do get that as far as like the big hits, the top rookies. But you go over that list right there. For example, the Chicago Bears, right? So you maybe would have had Walter Payton, Bob Avellini because he's a quarterback, and maybe like 1 or 2 other players. And it would just be those showing up in the set. I'm glad that there are cards of Bo Rather or Noah Jackson, Craig Clemens, just these players, that, I'd like to document that and remember them from being on the team. But that's just me. Maybe I'm a little old school. So next up here, I will show some of the locals from my home state because I do PC those. So one we have right here is MacArthur Lane. He went to my alma mater of Utah State. And in 1976, he led the NFL in receptions. He had 66, and that just shows, again, the difference in how the game was played. So Drew Pearson was the AFC leader with 58, and MacArthur Lane, a running back, had 66. And so, yeah, nowadays, that's not even going to come close. But it's a different game. It's played very different than it was back then. But anyway, yeah, I always love seeing players from my alma mater who are in the NFL. Now with these cards, like I mentioned with the Franco Harris, here's a Billy Joe Dupree and a Coy Bacon. They did highlight players who had the All-Pro status, and then players with the 1,000-yard club like Otis Armstrong and Rocky Bleier. And so those are some cards right there that I just wanted to kind of highlight. Now I will mention another one who's in here. We had Sam Cunningham, who is Randall Cunningham's older brother, and the late Sam Cunningham. And then we also had, let's see, this is a guy who I think should be in the Hall of Fame, Ken Anderson. And I really like that image a lot. I always like the in-action shots. There are not a ton of those back then. So I really enjoy when they highlighted the players in action. And I'm also going to highlight this card right here, Brian Sipe, who, when these cards came out in '77, was the NFL's MVP, part of the Cardiac Kids Browns team that was had a lot of excitement. And then we had players like this who were still around when I was, collecting in like Pro Set and Score era, Pat Leahy. And then going back to those Hall of Famers, right here we have Alan Page, who was the 1971 MVP and inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1988. Then we have Robert Brazil right there, pretty cool card, inducted back in 2018, part of the All-Decade team. And of course, Alan Page was a Supreme Court judge. Such an amazing life on and off the field. Then we have Terry Bradshaw, inducted in 1989, four-time Super Bowl champ. Tom Mack right here, inducted back in 99, made 11 Pro Bowls, kind of an underrated, in my opinion. And then Art Shell, who I always remembered as the Raiders head coach, inducted back in 89, three-time Super Bowl champion, and Raiders head coach, and he won Coach of the Year one year, early on. All right, next up we got Dan Fouts. I always love that card. You've got the vehicle in the background and him potentially just warming up. But again, another great player right there. Inducted in 1993, four-time passing leader. Then we got the late Curly Culp, I should say, right there. Made the Hall of Fame in 2013. He was the 1975 Defensive Player of the Year. I believe he passed away as well. And then Roger Worley made the Hall of Fame in 2007 and was a seven-time Pro Bowler. So those are the Hall of Famers right there. And now we'll move on to a deep dive into some of the notable rookies from that year. All right, so one notable rookie from that year was Cleveland Elon, defensive tackle. He was a fourth-round pick out of Tennessee State. He had a couple really great seasons. 1976, he had 14 and a half quarterback sacks. That was before they counted them officially. As well as in 1977, his best year, 17 and a half sacks. And he was an All-Pro. As you can see in the 78 card, they note that for the year prior. But he was an All-Pro that year, made 2 Pro Bowls. And he finished up his career with the Detroit Lions right there. He passed away back in 2012. He was only 60 years old. But definitely had some very good seasons there, especially with those 49ers teams. So there's a notable rookie right there to start things off. Next up, we've got Tony Galbreth. That's his rookie card on the left with the Saints. He was known as Mr. Everything, and he was a second-round pick out of Missouri, played for the Missouri Tigers. He and Chuck Muncie were known as Thunder and Lightning. They were a really good running back duo, and Galbraith was excellent out of the backfield. In fact, here is his record breaker card. It was a 78 record breaker in the 79 top set. Most receptions by a running back in a game. And if we want to take a look, how many? 14 receptions. He broke 13, which was set by Lydell Mitchell before that. And so he had a very, very solid career. In fact, when he retired, he had a record. He had the most receptions by a running back in NFL history at the time of his retirement, and he did finish things off with the Minnesota Vikings. And so, yeah, he played for the Saints as well as the Vikings and the Giants. He was a Super Bowl champ in Super Bowl 21, and he is a member of the New Orleans Saints Hall of Fame. And I did watch a video. If I can find it, I'll include it in the description if you want to check it out. But a highlight of his career, and he really had some awesome plays. So, again, a guy who gets forgotten, but was very talented in his time. And I'm telling you, anyone who retires with the most receptions of anyone who's ever played the game up to that point at your position, that's worth noting. So, Tony Galbraith right there. Okay, next up I wanted to include Troy Archer. And the reason I did this more than anything else is just kind of as a little nod to him. He was a 13th pick in 1976. Really big kid out of Colorado. And I read a story when he was 6 years old, his dad forged his birth certificate to say he was 8 so that he could play football. And as a rookie, he made the all-rookie team. He was the 1976 Giants Rookie of the Year. And he had 5 fumble recoveries in his career, including one that he ran back for a touchdown. But I just thought I'd mention him because back in June of 1979, he was only 24 years old, and his pickup truck crashed into a telephone and he passed away. And the cops at this scene had said that they thought, it was raining and he might have been going a little fast and just missed the turn. And so I wanted to include him just because this is a guy who was forgotten, but an up-and-comer, talented player, and just gone too soon. So I thought I'd give him a little shout out there. All right, and this is Lewis Carter. The reason I decided to include him was he's a third-round pick out of Maryland. Also played he was with the Raiders to start things off, and then moved over to the Buccaneers, where the Bucs took him as part of the veteran allocation draft. And in 1976, he led the Bucs in rushing. But the reason I'm including him is he is kind of a trivia fact. He was the first Buccaneer to throw a touchdown pass in Buccaneers history. It was a run play against the Seahawks, and they had bottled him up, and so he threw the ball to Morris Owens, and Morris caught the pass. So this is, I believe, his one and only card, and he passed away back in 2020 at 67 years old. But yeah, the first player to throw a touchdown in Buccaneers history right there. All right, and then next up, we're going to have Archie Griffin. Some of you may remember this guy if you were around. It was before my time, but in college, he was just amazing. Now, for any of you who kind of follow these show and tell videos, the reason there was such a large gap between number 2 and number 3 from this set was that I ordered an Archie Griffin autographed card. It was one of the Panini autographs over the last few years, and I ordered it, and then the guy I ordered it from never sent it. It said it had a shipping label, but when you go to tracking it, it never said it was sent. So I emailed him multiple times, never heard back from him. And then I went to his site again, and when I ordered the card, his rating was quite high. And then by the time I went back after a few weeks, his rating had dropped significantly. And there was 1-star review after 1-star review, all saying the same thing. He never sent the card. He's not replying. Nothing's happening here. And that happened to me as well. So I put in a dispute with eBay. They asked if it was resolved. I said no. Then they followed up with another email to say, your case is now closed. And I was like, what the heck? So anyway, I was a little discouraged by that. Ended up not really getting another auto of his, so I just decided the other day, well, I should probably jump back into this series anyway. So here we are. So Archie Griffin, his pro career was fine, but nothing all that special. He ended up rushing for 2,800 yards, a little over 4 yards a carry. He had 1,600 receiving yards. He also threw a touchdown pass. And he also played one game with USFL with the Jacksonville Bulls. He had, I think it was like 10 carries for 11 yards, and then he never played again. He did have a really good rookie season, 4.5 yards a carry, 625 yards. His best year was 1979, where he had 688 yards and averaged 5 yards a carry, which, 5 yards a carry in the NFL is really good. But the reason I'm highlighting him is because of his college career. He was fantastic. So he played at Ohio State, and after finishing 5th in Heisman Trophy voting as a sophomore, he went on to win back-to-back Heisman trophies, which is fantastic. He's the only player to win 2 times, and he's in the College Football Hall of Fame. His brother, his brother Ray also played for the Bengals and was featured in the Football Brothers set. But again, just one of the greatest players in college football history, and so I wanted to include him as well. All right, next up, this is the biggest rookie of this video, which was Danny White, who I think is a really underrated player. I mean, I know a lot of Cowboys fans really loved him. I was a big fan of his. I loved that he played both punter and quarterback for a big chunk of his career. How valuable was that? Because when he was the backup to Roger Staubach, their backup quarterback was ready to go at any time, but he was also getting in the games to punt. And when he was the starting quarterback, that potentially right there saves a roster spot for another player. And it made him dangerous on those 4th downs, as far as whether he was going to punt or not. So just a little background on him. The most impressive part of his entire life is that his father played halfback for the Bears. That was back in the early 50s, which I think is pretty awesome. He was a 3rd-round pick out of Arizona State in 1974. And like I mentioned, he was a backup to Roger Staubach, and it's hard for anybody to come in and replace Roger Staubach, the legend. But Danny White did a really good job of that. So he was a very talented quarterback and punter in college. He's in the College Football Hall of Fame. He went 32-4 in college, and in 1973 he was an All-American. While the Cowboys drafted him, because of Harbaugh, they really wanted him to focus on being a punter. So he was a little discouraged by that. And you can see here on the back of his rookie card, you'll see he played 2 years with Memphis, and it has his punting record there. Now, his punting record with the Cowboys would get better than that 38.4. But you can see here, he went there because they were going to let him play quarterback and punter. And so anyway, after a couple years in Memphis, the World League folded, and he signed with the Cowboys. So he was their starting punter and their backup quarterback. And there's a game, if I can find it, I'll put it on here, but he had 2 fake punts in one game that he converted both of those on. And they were both rogue plays. No one knew but him that he was going to do it because he read the defense and thought it was the right move. And Tom Landry had given him that permission. He had let Danny know, hey, if you're seeing something, you go ahead and go. You make that call. So it was always kind of a surprise when that would happen. His first touchdown pass was in 1976 versus the Bears. But he was a solid backup. And then once, Staubach had an amazing season in 1979. And in fact, then he retired. So Danny White got called in to be the starting quarterback in 1980. That card in the middle is his 1980 card. So the year that card came out, he was now the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. He was very solid. He went 62-30 during his time there. In 1982, he was an All-Pro. I'll kind of show, this is his 82 card, and this is his 82 in action. And that was what was really nice, was finally being able to get the logos on the helmet. So this is his 83 card, and it shows his Pro Bowl designation. And I always loved his in-action photo from that year, from 83, because it shows him punting the ball. He made it to the playoffs 5 times with the Cowboys. His final year was 1988, I believe. But he made it to 3 straight NFC championships, but he never got to a Super Bowl. So I really believe, had they gotten to and won a Super Bowl, I do think he'd be viewed in an even more positive light. But he was a very talented player. And I will mention, let's see there, I've got his starting lineup card. No longer have the starting lineup, unfortunately. Most of those are long gone. I just have a handful now. But anyway, with him in 1986, the Cowboys won 6 of 8 games, and White was leading the NFL in passing at the time. But then he had a season-ending injury. Carl Banks just kind of destroyed him, and the Cowboys only won 1 game for the rest of the year. And in 1987, he just never really recaptured that success, unfortunately. And so then when he did retire a year later, he had 155 touchdowns, 8 rushing touchdowns, 2 receiving touchdowns, 25,000 punting yards. At his retirement, he held 8 passing records for the Cowboys, and he was the Cowboys' all-time punt leader. And I do have this cool Don Russ card. I was glad to see they kind of included him back in the 24 product right here. That's numbered 37 out of 50 right there. And there are some ties to him in my home state. He did some coaching in the Arena League. He was the head coach of the Utah Blaze for the Arena Football League here in Utah back in 06 to 08. So there was that little tie-in right there as well. But yeah, a really solid quarterback, has a lot of really good cards, and so that was definitely one of the more notable rookies of the 1977 set right there, Danny White. I'll briefly mention this guy too. This is Mike Espazito, running back for the Falcons. He was a 7th-round pick in 75 out of Boston College. He was just with the Falcons for 3 years. He only rushed for about 400 yards. But I'm including him because of a notable story. In 1974, there was an East-West Shrine game, and the players would go to Shriners Hospital to visit the kids. And he was there, and while he was there, he saw a young girl, just this 2-year-old girl named Nicole, who was a young patient, and she was crying. And he was able to calm her down, and he took her hand and went on a little walk with her. And there was a photographer there who took the picture. And that picture went all over the place. It was in the paper. And it inspired the logo for the East-West Shrine game that is still used today. So if you Google that image, you'll see a picture of a player, number 26, walking hand in hand with a little girl. And that image is the logo to this day for the East-West Shrine game. And there's even a video I watched of them reuniting and being at one of the Shrine games. I'll try to include that video in the link in the description as well. Typically when I make these show and tell videos and feature players, if I find any good highlights or stories, I'll throw those in the description. So you can do a little dive into those if you guys are interested. But again, there's Mike Espazito. And then last up, we'll finish with a Chicago Bear. This is Reeve Sorry. This is his rookie card. I love this image. Okay, he looks awesome. Typical great Soldier Field image. Anytime you get Soldier Field with the background right there, I love that photo. So that's one of my favorite cards from that set. And right there is his first 3 cards. I'll show a few others as well. And you can notice a handful of these. We've got the All-Pro right there because he was a very, very good player. Really helpful for Walter Payton during those early seasons. And he was a 5th-round pick out of Illinois, second-team All-Pro. And then in 1975, they draft Payton. And he played in 109 games with the Bears, 2-time All-Pro. He retired after the 1983 season. And here's his last football card right there. I'm trying to remember which one it was. Was it this one? Yeah. Of note, Reeve often frequents the New York disco scene. So I always love those little random facts about the players. So anyway, Reeve was a great player, and like I said, had some cool cards. I love his rookie card. Seeing the traditional old-school Soldier Field in the background is always a cool image. So, all right, well, that will do it for today. Thank everyone for watching. I'll be back with another round of this in the near future, and I have a boombox that should be here any day, so hopefully I'll get something good in there. And as always, go Bears.